Historical NFT investors. It is such a thing. And actually, in the historical NFT space, I would call it more so historic collectors. You don't see the flipping mentality as pervasive in this area that we concentrate our time in, as you see within the modern NFTs. And so with that reasoning, I had to bring in one of the notable collectors in the space, somebody that I've been following for quite some time, puts out some good threads, and every Discord that I go into, I end up finding this guy there as well, putting out his ideas and information that he's brought into the space. So without further ado, Zero G.
Hey, Jake. Nice for you to have me on.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, my friend. We're in a weird predicament currently as we record this podcast within the historic space. Everything's kind of down. We've gone through these like fluctuations of massive pumps, almost like Dogecoin like pumps, where you see 2 or 3 days of the volume just ramp up like 10x and then just slowly depreciates and tails off until we get the next kind of catalyst. I guess this would be a good place to start. Why do you think that this is? What is kind of holding the historic space back?
Well, I don't think that we've gotten to the point where we have a large enough amount of people buying for long term. So we have, in the NFT space, and especially in modern, there's a huge mentality of keeping up with the latest mint and flipping. And, not to say that there's anything wrong with that. That's fine. But a lot of people are entering and exiting the vintage space for basically to flip and take advantage of these opportunities. So we don't have enough sustained demand to kind of dampen some of those cycles is kind of how I see it. Right.
Yeah.
But also, I do think long term though that, or at least medium term, we'll have a lot more volatility in terms of price in the historic market because we have such a limited supply versus the incoming aggregate demand. I mean, it's a trivial amount of ETH that hits the historic space that hits just like on a daily basis. Hits like you have Azuki and all these other NFTs that MFers that are blowing up to multi ETH per in these 10,000 collections. And you take that volume and even if you sprinkled it across the entire NFT vintage space, or if you applied it to a single collection, it would render that market unrecognizable overnight, right? And it wouldn't return. It would always be forever changed because there's so many diamond handlers. So, there's going to be an inelasticity there is inelasticity to the supply in the vintage space. So, reactions to any significant capital inflows are going to be exaggerated.
It's kind of that idea of the collector mindset versus the flipper mentality. Yeah. And one thing we see within the space that we hang out in is a lot of the assets are generally 1 ETH or more. And although the volume isn't, or the activity isn't nearly in the multitudes of the modern NFTs, you do see this slow trickle of trading, but it is generally with large size at a time. Yeah. And if somebody wants to move an asset in the historic space, a lot of time it's not shown through these marketplace aggregators. Like if you're going on to Counterparty or Namecoin or some of these ones that haven't been wrapped, there's a large amount of OTC trading which generally isn't recognized through the analytics and generally is shared through Twitter, where a lot of the people in the space or a lot of the leaders like Adam and Leonidas have about 30,000 followers. But then when you look over on the other side, a lot of those people have 200, 300,000 followers. So it just like the message isn't as echoed as we'd like to be, or at least yet.
Yeah, I know. I've participated in several high value OTC deals that I've brokered for myself and for friends, and like you said, that doesn't hit the tape. So that's one reason I'm trying out as a side hustle to see if that develops. Is I'm trying to also offer a brokering service as well because I'm recognized in the space. I'm trusted. I mean, my accounts are doxed too. I mean, I'm not going to rug people, but there's definitely value there for both the buyer and the seller. So, for the seller, because we have this illiquidity in the market, there's a couple examples where that really comes in. So, like especially in the RAREPEPE space, you have these artists that they can have 50% of the supply, right? And they can't unload that without really crashing the price. So I see brokerage in that space as offering a lot of value. So you can undercut the official price without having it hit the tape and undercut the official book value of the rest of their bag, right? And in a similar thing, I'm brokering a couple of full sets of Curio cards too, which are one of the most amazing NFT sets on Ethereum. So again, you can get that for below the floor price on OpenSea. So it's an exciting opportunity. But yeah, there's tons of volume that happens OTC. So yeah, I don't know if we'll ever really get an accurate representation in these analytics, because it's once you get up into these really high dollar sets, the 5% fee from OpenSea, is significant. And then, and there's value for both especially for the buyer. If he can broker an OTC deal for 30% underneath the OpenSea floor, that's an amazing deal for them, especially when you're talking 1, 200, 300, 400 F in a deal. That's significant. So.
And especially in the Pepe market, you can even say that RAREPEPEs are probably about 50% of all supply of the historic space because of how large that collection really is. Yeah. But even some of those large sales, like the $1 million Pepe, I believe it's sold twice for over $1 million, but it's on counterparty. So it's more just promotion at that point to help keep that price history. But you did bring up a very specific point that is only pertinent to the historic space, and it's the inequality, or you could say it's the unequal ownership ratio. And what happens with a lot of these pumps that we see with these like Doge-like pumps, and then a red candle right back down, is a lot of these OG holders tend to dump into the momentum every single time, which then suppresses the price. And it's not like that in the modern space, because everyone's minting, and you can run bots to corner the market in a sense, but you're not getting anywhere close to 40, 50%, which we see in all collections. You probably see it in like Curio and Pepe and the Twitter eggs market, Mooncats. It's a constant problem that we're trying to solve. Have you thought about this at all, or maybe any solutions to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was thinking about like the brokerage as something that would help alleviate that to an extent. But as a buyer, if you're paying like retail for some of these assets that have the terrible distribution, it's a tremendous gamble, and the way I look at it is, if you're willing to buy something with terrible distribution, you have to have a really long-term outlook. Otherwise it's a bad move, right? And that what you would consider healthy depends on the particular asset too. I mean, when you look at like Curio cards versus RAREPEPEs, Curio cards are getting way healthier distribution now than RAREPEPEs. RAREPEPEs, it's common to see one wallet have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of supply in a single wallet, right? So with Curio cards, we're seeing really healthy distribution now that I think is really going to set them up for more sustainable and healthy price action in the future. Now you see 50% individual like unique holders. That's really awesome. So we're never going to have every wallet having one, but it's getting a lot healthier in Curio cards. So I don't track a ton of markets because I don't really trade, but I pay attention to Curio cards and RAREPEPEs for sure. And it's interesting to see that play out. But yeah, exactly. It's every time we see a big rally in these assets that have the terrible distribution, you always see that the dump into that volume too.
Yeah, I've thought about this multiple times on how to go about it. If I was a whale, I would almost just do like a Dux auction with at least half of the supply that I owned, if I owned 50%, because then you could get a lot of people in the community in at a lower price. Yeah. And you could even put up mechanisms where if somebody has an asset in their wallet, then they can't purchase it, or one per wallet, or you could limit it. But we just need to grow these communities much larger, as we've seen in the NFT space. The larger the community, the higher the price goes, the more momentum that it has. And if CryptoPunks or Bored Apes are a sign of where these NFTs and these communities can really go, the ceiling is really limitless.
There's a couple of mechanisms that have been tried out for doing similar things. So there's Pepe Drops, I think .io. So it's a service where Pepe holders can essentially do a declining price auction, or they've also structured it to where they'll have a price or a declining price, and anything that doesn't meet that then gets burned, right? So and Scarce City has done similar types of auctions where, whatever doesn't sell at a particular price, those assets get burned. So again, there's been a couple sales where at the end of that, at the beginning, there's one wallet with like 70% of the supply. And after the end of that sale, the distribution looks great. It looks pretty healthy. So I think those types of things are probably going to get more prevalent, because it's also a quick way for the OG or the whale holding the asset to quickly convert that into profit, right? Without having to trickle those out over the course of, again, in a market like this that is so volatile, especially like Pepe's, these guys have been holding on to these bags since the beginning. So this is like, at a minimum 5 years for a lot of these artists. So, a lot of them, I see the need to cash out some and take care of, because they can't count on this, being a rational, human being. You can't count on these prices persisting forever. You have to hedge, right? So it makes sense for them to cash out and take advantage of that. So yeah, I see that happening.
How do you define an NFT? The reason why I ask this is because this is a common conversation between all of the different historic communities debating the semantics of what's a non-fungible token. Is the art, or is the token the art? Is the image the art? And then when you go to Namecoin, is the registry the art? How do you evaluate this across multiple historic chains?
Well, if I guess if you get down to the literal definition, it's a unique token, non-fungible. It's unique, and it's securely traded. In the way I interpret that, is securely traded on chain. I mean, there's, So in terms of the art, so the earliest, what I would consider the earliest version of like art or even proto art are like the 2011 Puny codes. So those are, so first, the earliest NFTs that or what I consider NFTs are the Namecoin domains, right? So those are, just like ENS names, those are securely registered, securely tradable. They're unique, non-fungible and unique, right? So and they're traded securely on the Namecoin blockchain. So they're really ahead of their time. It's just that that decentralized name service didn't really take off. So the Puny codes, to me, though, are really fascinating in the sense that so there you have like not just a non-fungible token, but it's the first time we have in that non-fungible token encoding visual information on chain in the token. That, to me, that makes, whether you consider it an art NFT or not, it's, to me, that's where you can get into like semantics and get into an argument of that. But regardless of whether you think it's art or not, I think it is by definition the earliest implementation of the elements of an art NFT, period. So I think that they're extremely significant from that perspective. So that all those elements are incorporated from then on, and the rest of the, everything that followed that. So it's really interesting. So, I think it takes someone that, a collector or someone that appreciates that history to go after those. But I think they're going to be very coveted for that reason. Again, there's people that collect different things, but I think those are going to be long-term a really prized asset for that reason. But yeah, that's kind of my take. I think it's really interesting what we've seen now with CryptoPunks and even like the CryptoCats, where we have creators essentially disparaging earlier contracts too. So that's kind of an interesting, something interesting that's been going on too. So whether you value the token and the art for what it is, or whether you value what the artist says, you should value too, is interesting as well.
Yeah, we're gonna have a very interesting precedent case once the Sotheby's Namecoin lawsuit is dealt with, and whether Sotheby's takes blame, or Kevin McCoy, or both assets end up becoming valuable. For those that don't know, Kevin McCoy and Sotheby's sold what was called Quantum, which at the time was called the first NFT. It was basically a GIF that was minted on the Namecoin blockchain in early 2014. But what happened is Kevin McCoy actually reminted the image or the GIF on Ethereum and then sold it for $1.4 million last year. And now there's a lawsuit where the person who owns the original Namecoin token that was minted in 2014 is claiming that's the real token. And then Sotheby's and Kevin McCoy are claiming that what they sold is the real token because that's what Kevin McCoy says. So the art versus the token is going to be an interesting precedent case.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great case too, because, the art was associated with that original token. So for the artist and Sotheby's now to say, oh yeah, just ignore that original one. This is now the new original one. It's going to be fascinating. It's hard to predict what courts do too, because, a lot of that defies common sense. But I know personally, I would place greater value in the original Namecoin asset myself.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is if Sotheby's and Kevin McCoy end up winning, and also the person who's suing isn't suing for money, they're just suing so that Sotheby's recognizes the original token as the original token itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The community seems by far and large having a large preference towards the original token itself. And so I would feel very bad if I was the person who bought it, and then the market itself is heavily favoring the original token. So whether he's reimbursed for the 1.4 million, it's going to be very, very interesting to follow.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, spending that kind of sum of money. And I mean, again, at the time that was considered, quote unquote, the first NFT. If you were a whale, that would be the perfect opportunity to get something, again, what the earliest NFT, why wouldn't you, right? And to get rugged like that. That's terrible, so
and
I feel bad for the guy.
In this space, you never really know. And I've kind of backed off on claiming a lot of these firsts with Mooncats, as I'm a large investor. Obviously, there was a lot of different firsts, but now I tend to move or gravitate more towards one of the earliest or the first notable or recognized, because things just become uncovered every day. The Puny codes was within the last month. Yeah, it was within 2022. And literally it goes all the way back, at least to what we think is the first domain of Bitcoin.bit on April 21st, 2011. And Namecoin being the first altcoin, it's a fork of Bitcoin. You would likely think that it's the first ever NFT, but it's at this point, who knows? I know Devoted also showed me that there's actually an image that's ingrained in the Bitcoin blockchain from before that, but it's a non-tradable asset. So that can go even further into debates and arguments.
Yeah, I've seen those images, like the Bernanke and stuff. Those are really cool. The issue is that those aren't tradable. They're just embedded into the blockchain itself. But they are super cool. I mean, that's an amazing part of crypto history as well. But yeah, as far as I can tell as well, Namecoin was the first chain that supported the ability to have non-fungible assets. So yeah, I can't see, but like you, I'm not going to state absolutely, because like you've seen, there's been so many like things dug up since really starting with CryptoPunks losing that status to Curio cards, and then then losing, first NFT status on ETH to Ethereum, and on and on. It's been, exactly. You can't say it'll be interesting to see where all this stuff shakes out in a year or two, right?
Yeah, especially with crypto, new technologies pop up. I could definitely see something in the future where some sort of blockchain technology can pull that untradeable asset out of the blockchain somehow, and then make it tradable, and then the whole thing just kind of starts all over again.
Well, that's kind of what you saw with that Terra Nullis V2. That really wasn't a tradable asset, but essentially you have taking like database entries and creating a quote unquote wrapper, and then trading representations of that. I mean, I don't consider that an NFT for that reason. It didn't have the native capability to trade. You're basically creating a secondary asset in a sense, very similar to what they did with quantum, right? So you're creating, except slightly different, the same ideas. You're creating another representation of an original asset, right? And then selling it as if it's the original, right? It's not, right? So, that quantum is I can't wait to see what happens with that. But yeah,
following it very closely. You're as we're talking about early NFTs. I believe you got your start in Curio cards, but I'm more interested in your early story. How did you come across NFTs?
Yeah, so the very first involvement with crypto NFTs was I had a couple of mining rigs at the time, and I was mining altcoins and random stuff back in the day. And I started mining this project called CryptoPepes, which is really funny. It's it's kind of like a punks-like mix up with CryptoKitties. So CryptoKitties had blown up earlier in that year, and this was an attempt to make a CryptoKitties type game, except with Pepes. So I have all these different Pepe arts. So there's like 1,000 of these Gen Zero Pepes, or 1,100 Gen Zero Pepes that were distributed via of mining, and not like trivial mining with mooncats. Like this was mining where you had mining rigs. Like I had mining rigs with 1080 Ti's that were grinding away just for weeks, and that's how I was able to get some of these Gen Zeros. So those were the first NFTs I got through mining. I collected some of those. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and then I came across CryptoPunks, and later on after that, several times, and I never pulled the trigger. I looked at them every time I came across them. I looked at them for like an hour. I was like, man, this is really cool, but I didn't really get it, But at the same time, I was like, yeah, $400 or $800, that's a lot of money for a CryptoPunk. So I passed, and my first big purchase, my first real NFT purchase, maybe I bought one of the crypto Pepes back then. But my first NFT purchase actually was my CryptoPunk in January of last year. I joined the CryptoPunks Discord, and I really got a pretty good education from the cats in there at the time. And I was sold, so I decided for me, it was a huge shock to do it. But I spent 9F on my CryptoPunk. So I was, at the time, that was $15,000, and I'd never spent anything on an NFT before. So, I actually bought it from Token Angel, which is the guy that sold the Pepinopolis and some other, he's an enormous trader and collector. So, but that's where I got my start, is my CryptoPunk. So after I got my CryptoPunk, I still was hanging out in their Discord, and that's when these rediscoveries started happening. And a lot of this was posted in this CryptoPunks Discord. So I got involved with the crypto cats, like you see there. I got in on the rediscovery of that. I claimed that one. I claimed 2 and I sold 1. I got in on the Mooncats. So I minted, if you see in there, like those, I have 11 Mooncats that I minted that night. So, and I also claimed the associated loot prints too, see in there. What else did I get? And that's also from that community. I found a tweet from Harry BTC that got me involved in Curio cards. So Curio cards are, this is an amazing project. It's still really slept on, in my opinion. So, Harry BTC shared the information how anyone could go in and claim these Curio cards for a nominal amount from the dispensers. So I was able to get a handful of floor cards from the dispensers. And but even after the fact, I saw a lot of reticence from the CryptoPunk owners from buying in or even caring about these, which I thought was amazing, because one of the claims by CryptoPunks at the time, it was even in the OpenSea collections, that it was the first NFT on ETH, and these you could cryptographically prove it with the contract. These preceded CryptoPunks. So it was very interesting. So we saw people essentially refuse to buy into them just because it hurt the narrative of their bags. So I didn't. I thought they were amazing. So I claimed those and I traded a little bit of them. And I have right now I have 24 out of the 30 unique cards. I'd love to have a full set one day, but they're. We'll see if I'm ever able to pull that off. But yeah, Curio cards are great. They, it's amazing that as a project they didn't rug. There are so many scams back in the day. So for a project to remain viable like that is cool. They have an amazing community. I try and contribute where I can too. So it's really it's an amazing project. The first art collection on ETH. I don't see how this doesn't become one of the most, especially as ETH continues to grow as the de facto platform for NFTs. I don't see how this doesn't become enormously more important, and recognized.
I see this as well. I only hold one card. I hold the Apple because I thought that was the most iconic one, as being literally the first art asset itself. All of these it's similar to RAREPEPE. These are ERC 1155 or the equivalent of it. So there's different supplies for the different assets themselves. Yeah. What do you think is holding Curio cards back? They're very similar with Mooncats, where they kind of pump together and they kind of sell off together. Do you think it's the unequal distribution of OGs selling into momentum, or is it something else?
Well, earlier on, for sure, there was definitely whales selling into the pumps. But I think now we're getting a lot better. Well, I mean, take, for example, dogs trading. So you look at that 132 owners, that's not great. That's a 500 supply card. But if you look at some of the floor cards now, we're getting distribution of unique owners above 50%, which is really healthy. I think a lot of it is just a lack of awareness within the NFT space, and a lack of awareness within the NFT space of vintage NFTs as a whole. I think Curio cards are definitely a blue chip within the vintage NFT and within the vintage Ethereum NFT space. I just think it's a matter of time. I mean, similar to Mooncats, I think Mooncats they're a really cute and amazing piece of NFT history on Ethereum. They're also super non-offensive. They're easy to understand and cute for non-crypto people to really grasp. That's one reason I think, as we see Coinbase and these other the oncoming wave of new people move into NFTs, I think some of the first assets that people will gravitate to in the vintage space are going to be Mooncats and Curio cards. Like with RAREPEPEs and some of the earlier stuff, there's that whole thing you have to understand wrappers and all of that stuff. With Mooncats and Curio cards, it's a lot easier to understand. Again, Mooncats are super cute. They don't have a enormous supply. It's very, very reasonable at about 26. Okay, so I think Mooncats are primed to be, and they're so distinctive that they'll become iconic. And that's another thing I also think about Crypto Arte as well, is it's such a distinct early art set of art pieces. The look is unmistakable. So I think over time we'll see that they're going to be iconic. If you go into a room or someone's virtual gallery or whatever, you see, even from 10, 20 feet away or, the equivalent, you see that, exactly what that is right away. So I think they're really cool.
Yeah. Crypto Arte is very interesting. I believe it's the second generative NFT project on ETH, at least. What's your opinion, as we were talking about Mooncats and growing this space? Pondower's taken a little bit of a different direction from the historic space, where they're actually deciding to continue to innovate and implement some of the original plans that they had thought about back in 2016 and 2017. Do you think it's too much in a space of history where the asset can kind of just chill and people can just tell the story and continue on about the narrative? Or do you think some of these projects require some sort of innovation to kind of tie into the modern NFT space that we see today?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I don't think it has to be. I mean, I don't see that like it detracts at all by continuing to innovate and deliver. I think it's really cool. I'm looking forward to see what this game that they're developing looks like. But at the same time, I don't think that there's for me as a collector or investor or whatever. By any means, like I don't expect any utility out of, for example, RAREPEPEs or Curio cards or anything. If things develop, I think that'll be positive. But I just look at that as a bonus instead of something that you should be counting on. But yeah, I mean, it's rad to see the Ponderware team they keep delivering. So it's awesome.
It is. Yeah, I'm very excited. Gravball, P2E, God bless. Please a token come. I really hope so. There's going to be a staking component. Sorry, I hope so. When I interviewed them, they mentioned that it's possible there could be an ERC20 token associated with the game. It's a staking team game that we know where you need a Blueprint and a cat to play. Okay. My suggestion, or at least what I speculate is, if there is a token, then it'll be integrated into the boutique and the vending machines and some of the other things that they introduce, where you could play the game, and then it's kind of a positive feedback loop where people are locking up cats, playing the game, and then boutique designers then can have additional source of income through a different source or a different token. So,
I mean, I could definitely see additional accessories for the game. Again, I don't know much. I mean, a lot about the game is still a mystery, but I could definitely see how we have the boutique right now for the cats themselves. I could definitely see a boutique for the different suits that you use in the game, right? Like the mech suit and that kind of stuff. It's like custom paint or design for that. I could definitely see that, becoming, the more interest and the more usage you have, it's just a set of feedback loop. I don't see how it would be, I don't see anything positive out of that, right?
As I look through your vault, it looks like you took a very similar approach to what I did with RAREPEPEs, where you're going after majorly Series 1 cards, and then also some that have some sort of crypto significance, like the John McAfee one and Jihan, and there's a few other ones. This is your biggest purchase that I've seen. Maybe your largest.
By far.
Share a little bit insight on your thesis of the RAREPEPE card and the 100 ETH buy, and then Series 1 within RAREPEPEs.
Yeah, so a couple things there. So this is just like what we're looking in my vault is just the Pepes that I have wrapped. I have another 200 or 300 that are unwrapped. But I was really involved in Curio cards at the time as RAREPEPE started to blow up, and I just hadn't put a lot of attention on it. But towards the end of last year, I really started to wake up to RAREPEPEs and really what they mean as the very first decentralized community art project, and just how significant that is and how cool that entire project is. I mean, it's amazing. You have a variety of top tier pro looking art, Futures Pepe to these kid style art to trash art. I mean, just everything. It's you have such a variety of art there, a variety of stories that it's memeing on. So when I finally got the significance, I realized that I needed to get the Nakamoto card, and I was an early. I bought a tiny amount of crypto back in 2012, and I still have a little bit left. And I cashed out everything. I converted it all into buying that Nakamoto. That wiped me out. But that was I had this feeling at the time that similar to when I bought my Punk, is that I didn't buy my Punk to flip. I just had this feeling that, hey, if I don't, hold on a second.
No problem. Yeah, as we look through here, I own a lot of these. This is Series 1. And within Series 1, we see a lot of actual just crypto-associated cards, like Polani X and the ETH hack.
Yeah. So So when I realized that like when I bought my CryptoPunk, I just had the feeling that there's a pretty good possibility that the thesis that these guys were talking about had legs. So if I didn't buy my punk at the time, I'd get priced out, and that's essentially what happened. I mean, now it's like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 F for a floor punk. And so I bought a punk that I really liked the looks of at the time. And that's what I felt it was coming for the Nakamoto. I think that the Nakamoto is going to be, I think it's going to be one of the most significant vintage assets, period, for what it represents as the genesis of this project. It's super cool too, but I think it's going to be incredibly important for collectors in the future. So I just decided to bite the bullet and go for it. It's super rad. It was one, again, biggest purchase. I mean, is it insane to spend 100 F on an asset? Probably, but I think it's going to, what's even crazier is I don't plan on selling it, which is,
Smart man. I know with Rare Pepes too, there's the 300 clubs, and there are 300 of them. I'm sure there's a significant amount of alpha in that Discord or channel or wherever the communications are harbored.
It's really an amazing group because, like there's a misconception that it's super elitist or anything. But it's really not once you're in there. But one thing that's amazing is to be able to chat with people that are, like I recognized one of the members from the Punks Discord when I joined the 300 Club, which is Mr. 703, which his name is referencing the amount of punks that he claimed.
Jesus.
Yes. These guys, again, the foresight to recognize the value of punks that early on, right? I mean, these guys were, again, they're really ahead of their game. So I feel really privileged to be a member of that group just because, and I'm a small fish in comparison to a lot of these guys. But it's really cool. Like a lot of these guys are really on top of the NFT scene and where things are going. So it's cool.
So regarding some of these other investments, Pepes are so diverse. First, there's about 1,700 different cards, and then we see things that the crossover into traditional art, movies, the cultural cards. Some of them are like inside jokes within the community that you have to figure out. You have hip hop, John McAfee. Is there anything that sticks out to you within the Rare Pepe collection that you tend to gravitate towards?
There's definitely certain things that draw me. Like one is if you look at like the zeroing Pepe, that was one of my recent purchases. Most people don't recognize a lot of the memes and the references, but this is, way back in the day around 2000, 2001, one of the biggest memes at the time was this video going around called All Your Base, right? So this is a play on that, which again, back in the day, it was one of the biggest things. That's when like photoshopping like images was just really becoming a thing as a way of memeing and whatnot. So this is a play on that, which to me as a teenager, I thought that was All Your Base was super rad. So I was really glad to be able to grab that. But some of it is just an appreciation for like the Futures Pepe is that I grabbed is the art on that is amazing. It's like it's professional quality art and it's cool. So again, it can just be like some of the references that it's referring to are super cool, or the artwork itself, or I don't know. It's just whatever calls to you. I'll buy stuff too if it's just a really good deal.
Yeah, within the Futures Pepe too, I've noticed that cards that have other cards inside of it tend to be valued much higher. So we see there's a Nakamoto here on the screen. There's a Nakamoto card up here. I believe these ones up next to it are also Rare Pepe cards. Yeah. So I've noticed the community tends to value those kind of like meta displays within these different cards.
Yeah, I think so too. There's like one of them is Pepe Newton. The other one is Neon Frogs. And there's like a T Pepe or something in there. So yeah, there's a ton of references inside that one card. UFO Pepe is another one that I think is, so at least within Pepe's, that's the first GIF. And I also just think it looks really rad too.
Yeah, it really does. I need to get one of these. I think the supply is like 800 on this specific one. Yeah, 800. So we got a little bit to go. To me, RAREPEPEs is kind of like the say all be all within the historic community. I think it has at least so much historical significance behind it. It had the largest grassroots movement. I believe there was like 100 different artists that contributed to this massive 1,700 card project. Well, 1,700 different cards. Some of the supplies on some of these are literally like billions and trillions. So you could say it almost has an infinite supply. But then the ways to value these cards, supply metrics does come into play, and the crossover before Pepe.w2f was built, you had to figure out like if somebody was gypping you on OpenSea with a higher value, and then you have to cross check with scarcity and then the dexes.
Yeah, Pepe WTF is an amazing project. I'm going to be doing some stuff there that I'll announce in the future. But one of the things that, again, if you wanted to buy Pepe's before, you'd have to create a little spreadsheet, and you'd have to check all these different markets, from the DEX to the dispensers to, like you said, scarcity, OpenSea. I mean, all these different places to try and figure out, if you're going to get wrecked on a purchase. So, it's great. It's a great aggregator. It makes it so much easier to see if it's a deal or not.
Yeah, we are beginning to see separate aggregators, or you could call them like a Pepe Explorer, popping up for different assets.
Yeah.
Do you think the historic infrastructure that's needed in order for the space to succeed is these like individual marketplaces or these individual data sources?
Well, I think that's definitely a positive development. The other thing that I've heard is being worked on is improved tooling for some of the counterparty, like the counterparty wallets. Like Free Wallet is a very popular wallet that, it doesn't have hardware wallet support, which is a huge deal that I've heard that they're working on improving. There's all these different like foundational components that need to be, again, like Free Wallet, it's got all these bugs and it's a little bit janky. I mean, it just needs to be updated. A lot of these tools need to be modernized. Again, I hate using anything that doesn't have hardware wallet support, right? So I think that's really important that, can't take that for granted. I'm not sure there's another popular Pepe wallet called like, was it like Free Pepe Wallet or something?
Yeah, Free RAREPEPE Wallet. I think.
Something like that. I don't think that offers hardware wallet support either. So to me, that's going to be a big addition to the tooling in the space. But the individual marketplaces, I think it would be definitely positive. That's one of the things that Curio Cards has going for it, is that by having that single listing, there's a lot more liquidity. Like when it comes time to, like, if you need to sell, there's always a bid there. Where, Pepe's, it's again, you have to at least right now, you have to take a much longer term view with that, because you're just not going to be able to get to unload that quickly without getting destroyed.
Yep, that's why I think Pepe is kind of like the final boss in the historic space. It's also one of the only collections across the entire NFT industry that could command a 100,000 or even million person community. So that's complete long-term view.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, another way to look at it too is Pepe is the de facto, like, most popular meme on the internet. You go into Discord channels, like, a lot of the emotes that you're going to see are Pepe's. It's universal at this point. So I see a really bright future for Pepe's. It's just, again, it's just going to take a little bit more time to, part of that is dispelling a lot of the myths around Pepe at the time. We have that documentary that came out, Feels Good, Man. Mm-hmm. It really helped me understand a lot of the context, because I wasn't involved in that scene back in the day. So I didn't understand a lot of the what people are afraid of. Right. But, Pepe's were curated to make sure that there was no like hateful material in there. So there's misconceptions that need to be, people need to get over through education. And again, it's part of it is the tooling. you said if we have marketplaces, that would help too. But using Emblem Vault is an additional hurdle over like Curio cards or Mooncats, for example, or Crypto Arte or any of these native assets where, you don't have to learn how to check the vault to make sure you're not going to get a fake, right?
Yeah, I agree as well. Tell me a little bit about LaoDao. You're the first person I've had on here that's a member of this. It pretty much is the first historic-based investment DAO. I know you're a member and you've been vocal within the community. Tell us a little bit about the objectives of it, and then what you've seen so far within the growth of this DAO.
Yeah, sure. So LaoDao is its purpose or its mission is to create one of the largest or most significant vintage NFT collections, as a DAO. So I think it's a really interesting experiment. Like currently, the assets that they've acquired are really span the range across the vintage space of quality projects. So, for example, we got a really high quality Mooncat. We've got a pre-AG Crypto Arte. We've got an Apple or two. It's just a really great portfolio. So, in a way, and again, you have to treat this as an experiment. But essentially, like when you have exposure to LaoDao, what you have exposure to is this almost like an index in the vintage NFT space. So you have quality assets like Test, a UFO Pepe, the JPGA, all these really great assets that it's really hard to, if you don't have that type of resources, you can't put together a portfolio that's diversified in the space, right? So it's a really unique way to have exposure across all of these assets in the vintage NFT space. The next thing I see as a goal personally, I've been contributing just as I bought a token and I've been contributing as an advisor on the investment committee. So what I'd like to see as the next step for LaoDao, if you see there are like what they've been able to acquire are high quality assets that are, generally 5ETH and under. What I would like to see next is to go after the next tier of asset. I would like to see them acquire something like a Nakamoto or an FD card. So that would basically give you exposure not just to all of these individual different assets that are, again, attainable for someone, to basically also have exposure to something that's going to be unattainable to most people, which is these legendary assets like, again, FD card, Nakamoto Pepe, something where, I was speaking with someone recently, and one of the things they pointed out is that like in the trading card space, what was it? Something like 60% of the gains in the entire market were made by the top 100 most valuable cards. So that's one of the reasons I'd like to see the LaoDao get exposure to one of those top tier assets, because we could see those just run away disproportionately, right? So anyway, that's where I'd like to see it go. There's still tokens available to mint if you want to buy in. As you can see, is 0.2 ETH per token. So how that works is that there's a multi-sig. So all the ETH that goes from these purchased tokens goes into a multi-sig. And then once we have enough ETH, the investment committee, the members vote, and the investment committee brings up a proposal or what they want to buy. And that gets approved, and we execute on that. So it's an interesting concept. I look forward to seeing where it goes in the future. But again, treat it as an experiment. I'm also a signer on the multi-sig too, as a treasurer. We have other trusted people as treasurers. So it's with that decentralization on the SIG, theoretically, this is going to be hopefully pretty solid. So again, I'm really curious to see where it goes. I think it's really a really cool project. It fits with my personal investment thesis, which is that historic NFTs are going to be probably from what I'm aware of, they'll probably be the best performing asset to be involved in, the significant ones. And this is a great portfolio.
Absolutely. Does the LaoDao have any sort of unwinding procedure in terms of selling an asset? Obviously, we're in the collector space. I'm sure that's probably the primary objective, is just to collect and hold. But is there any discussions in terms of selling an asset?
Yeah, so if the asset is sold, those funds get returned into the community or the DAO wallet. So if there's ever time to unwind the entire collection, then what would happen is we would unwind, we would sell the assets, and then the proceeds would be just dispersed proportionally to holders, right? To token holders. Okay. So that's how I see that playing out. Yeah. I mean, and I wouldn't, again, I'm a signer, so I'm not going to sign on something that's going to rug token holders. So,
right. And we're starting to see these historic NFT DAOs popping up, whether it's something super wide like LaoDao, where you're just covering the entire space, or the specific ones like Eggs DAO or Puny's DAO or Realms of ETH DAO. Mm-hmm. Everything is having some sort of specificity and has a different direction. Mm-hmm. Do you think that these historic DAOs are pivotal to the success of the overall industry of historic NFTs?
Yeah, I think they're going to be positive in a couple different directions or a couple different reasons. So one is, one of the tenets of my thesis is that a lot of these assets are going to be going into strong hands, and these DAOs are a prime example of that. So, for example, LaoDao's wallet, unless there's a reason to, I don't see the DAO selling any of these assets. So all of those assets you see, we just evaporated a supply out of a very limited market, like JPA, that's 100 supply. That's 99 left outside of us. And we're not selling. So it's going to be all of these historic DAOs are also going to be, again, removing supply from the market. I think their performance is going to give more credibility to historic NFTs as well. I mean, I've seen some metrics for Eggs DAO. They've been crushing it since they were incepted. I think it's going to be, with historic NFTs, success is going to beget success in the sense that, again, the more interest there is, we have, like, people don't understand how limited the supplies are in a global context for these assets. Like, again, 100 supply for one of these historic assets is nothing. So, there's not enough to go around when people figure out what they want, right? So it's a matter of education too, for people to realize the value proposition and the historical significance. It's going to be a supply shock, and these DAOs are going to be contributing to that.
I do think there's going to be some sort of breakaway speed within the historic space. And once that happens, it'll never return. We saw this happen with punks. Granted, they had a 4-year head start in community building, although most of these assets have been around for a long time. Really, only Pepes and punks have been active since pretty much their inception, or active to the degree of people just participating in the community. So we do need to follow that sort of game plan that they've set in place of just building the overall community. But once that happens, all it takes is a few large funds to start acquiring and increase that FOMO, or somebody like Gary Vee to come back in and start buying. We saw what happened with that recent pump. All Gary Vee he just signaled that he was interested, and everyone was like, oh crap, we need to start buying these immediately before everyone else does.
Well, that's something that I'm kind of passionate about too. Like, I believe in the space as a whole. Like, this isn't a short-term endeavor for me. So that's one thing I'm like, I've got a lot of side projects that I'm going to be working on this year. And one of my goals is to really continue to help the space with maturity and education and resources. The more that we help like each individual project and as a whole, it's going to add credibility and respect in the long term. So it's just building that base and keeping it a positive community, keeping it free of scammers and educating newcomers about, the essentials of hardware security and hardware wallets, basic InfoSec practices. I think the historic NFTs are probably the most exciting space to be in. And again, I said it before, and I still believe it. I think assets like the Nakamoto are going to be, within 10 years, it's going to be between 100 and 250 million dollars. Again, if LaoDao is able to acquire a Nakamoto Pepe, that's one more out of roughly 300 that are left. I don't know exactly how many have been lost. There have been some lost, but that supply is off the market, probably permanently, right? Mine's off the market. I know other people that have theirs that are never selling. So, there's not very many seats for these significant assets, and it's going to take really deep pockets to shake some loose in the near future.
Mm-hmm. You're very knowledgeable, and I can tell that you've thought about many different aspects and avenues that kind of intertwine itself within the historic space. Recently, as the area has gained more traction, some of the leaders like Leonidas and Adam have been growing their channels at a pretty fast rate. I've seen a lot of critics in the NFT space chastise historical NFTs as just other people's garbage or failed projects that are abandoned and should never be revived. As somebody who'd be coming new into the space and seeing this kind of criticism, have you thought about a way to combat that type of FUD?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so not everyone enters the space for the same reason, right? So some people are strictly doing it as essentially an investment. Some people are doing it because they appreciate the history of crypto and appreciation for where it's been and what that means to humanity. There's a wide range of why you would value something, right? Why the market values something. So you could say that at the time, Curio Cards was a failed project in the sense that they never sold out they weren't successful, right, on the market. But technologically, they made a huge impact. They were the first NFT to use IPFS for their image data. I mean, they did a bunch of really cool stuff. So, I mean, if you want to say that their performance in the current day back then makes them irrelevant is I think really short-sighted. Curio Cards as an example, is a great project. They you look back at the time, people are also lacking the context. Back then, there was an appreciation for NFTs at large. Like the crypto space was full of scams. I mean, that's like people were creating clone coins and all these different scams every day. I mean, so for these to not get the recognition is not really surprising, because back then all the hype was around altcoins, right? Like NFTs didn't have the hype. So anyway, yeah, I don't really buy into that thesis that because they weren't successful back then, that they don't have value. I think there's incredible value there. And again, I value a lot of these things for their historical relevance,
I actually did not know that Curio Cards was the first to use IPFS. That's a huge amplifier that I had not taken into account. So there's historical significance. There's other things like cultural significance, technological significance. Is there anything to you when you evaluate historic NFTs that you put as a priority or maybe a value amplifier?
Yeah, I mean, so I view like crypto as one of the biggest technologies and disruptors in current human history, and basically, like in our entire lifetimes, it's going to be one of the most significant change agents. So things that are relevant to the history of crypto itself or NFTs, because I see NFTs as probably the most powerful agent at onboarding people into crypto. Before we had this NFT boom in the last couple of years, you'd talk to people about crypto, and unless they saw the dollar signs, unless they really got it, most people just would shrug it off. But I see NFTs as a crucial component on onboarding, getting what we call normies involved in crypto, right? So it's really powerful for that reason as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to take some time. But once these timelines are built out and these explorers and aggregator, I know Shannon from M Vault has talked about creating a marketplace. Once we have everything that can just be like a one-stop shop, then I think you'll see a massive flood, whether the catalyst is Coinbase NFT creating a historical NFT section, because if they do, then you'll see OpenSea and Looks Rare and all of these other ones follow suit as well.
I mean, part of what I see is that, we haven't seen it much yet, but so we just saw this historic $28 million, alien punk sale. So again, what I've been banging the table about, and I'm working on finishing up an article to kind of flesh all this stuff out. But so that's a prime example of what I've been saying is that we're going to have a new wave of billionaires and multimillionaires that are crypto native and have ties to the cryptocurrency like scene. So they are much more apt to value the historical NFTs for the historical context in crypto, because that's where they live. They live in cryptocurrency. So the guy that bought that alien punk, he's the CEO of, I think, like chain.com. So that's a prime example of exactly what I've been saying. This guy splashed out 28 million for an alien punk. The supply of like Nakamoto's is 300, and versus 10,000 with CryptoPunks. That's one billionaire buying in. Wait till we have 100 billionaires, 1,000 billionaires. When these guys start throwing around money, the force for these projects will be altered forever. Like, we're going to be priced out. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do is build as big and as significant a collection as possible before that happens, because I think it's inevitable at this point.
I completely agree with you. I have a very similar feeling with historic NFTs as I do when I was acquiring Bitcoin under $10,000. It was like dedicating as much money as I could into the space to make sure you harbor those assets. And then it gets interesting into like your trading and investment thesis. Do you go after just the high end stuff that's more liquid, but has a higher appreciation? Or do you just buy in floors and try to understand the value metrics behind every collection, because they're all completely different, from Curio cards to Mooncats to Namecoin to everything else. Sometimes you just have to buy a floor just to figure out what's really going on, because then you have some skin in the game.
Yeah, I guess Namecoin, that's an interest. So it depends on the market. So Namecoin is an interesting one. I got involved in the rediscovery of the puny codes. So I harvested a few of those, or claimed a few of those, but because I saw the historic value in the 2011 puny codes, I was willing to go out on a limb, and I brokered a deal for someone else and for myself to make the first public sales at 10F, right? So there's a total supply of 85 of the 2011 puny codes. I brokered the first two 10F sales I brokered for myself and someone else. That put a big splash in the water for that entire market. It takes a lot of conviction to go out when no one else has spent anything like that. I think that so recognizing the value. So for that, part of that is the historic context of what I see it as the first implementation of all of the rudiments of a art NFT, the very first, and in 2011, that made it a no-brainer for me. I mean, not to say I had to dump a lot of stuff quickly to do that, but I think it was worth it. So with other collections like Curio cards and RAREPEPEs, it gets a lot more complicated, because, like we were talking about, the distribution is really a big deal, and also the time that you're willing to hold it. I tried trading altcoins back in the day. I wasn't really a great trader, and I kind of take a similar approach with NFTs. Instead of trying to time it, I just try and buy assets that I personally just like, or I know are going to be more valuable, that I will trade for other assets that I like even better, right? So I don't have a short-term time horizon on that. If something pumps really quickly that I didn't really like to begin with, I'll offload it. But I mean, my Curio cards I'm holding long-term. All my unique RAREPEPEs I'm holding long-term. That's how I approach it. But with RAREPEPEs, I like to see, the earlier the better, the better the distribution, the better, and just the cooler the better too, right? So
Have you speculated at all into the present or maybe the future in terms of evaluating something that's just now forming a community or now just coming onto the market that maybe will have some sort of historical significance in the future?
Yeah, I mean, Puny codes are basically an emerging community right now. So I think that it's interesting to be a part of that and to watch that process unfold. There's some other stuff that's going to be, there's some other collections that are going to be unearthed in the coming months that, we'll talk more whenever that happens. But I think it's going to be interesting to see that play out. We're going to see some unearthing of some different classes of assets people haven't seen before. So it's going to be fun, right?
Yeah, I think right now, currently, Datacoin and Emercoin are two chains that people are exploring. I was gifted a Puny code on Emercoin, which is pretty cool. Datacoin, though, some of these, once you start going into these like 2014 and earlier chains, they're so primitive that you need to actually have some sort of like technical understanding in order to navigate them. And that is not me. So I'm kind of just like the monkey following everybody.
Well, me too. I was able to follow along with the Puny codes and claiming those, but whenever they were started getting into the hex and stuff like that, I lacked the skills in order to follow along. So the other thing though is like Emercoin and Datacoin, like those are chains I'd never heard of, and I've been in crypto since 2012. I mean, it's so esoteric. I mean, at a certain point, how relevant was it if it was on a chain no one heard of? Namecoin was big. I mean, I remember that I bought Namecoin back in the day. I mean, because I believed in the idea of having a decentralized DNS system that wasn't, wasn't tied to anything else, So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And again, I'm not saying that they don't have value, but I mean, you got to temper it with what they were. I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit dumbfounding. So
it's interesting. I think some of it's just curiosity. Some of it is trying to create capital out of nothing. Some of it's storytelling within the historic NFT space. There's a heavier focus on completing the story and constructing the narrative than there is branding and marketing that you see in the modern space, which is, I think, part of the fun, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like I said, there's something I've got on my agenda for the coming year that hopefully we'll see we'll see some big stuff unearthed, and it'll be fun to see how that plays out too. So I'll definitely share that whenever we're getting close on that.
Please God. At some point, man, last year, I remember putting a tweet out in like September, October saying, I think we're nearing the end of this historical dig. And to my surprise, it keeps going on. So I'm not fighting it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I'm holding long-term. I believe in this. Again, I think the fundamentals from supply and demand and the relevance it's a slam dunk to me. So again, I'm all out of crypto and all into historic NFTs. That was a huge move for me.
Yeah, me too, my friend. Me too. It's more of a collect and chill and make sure that we could network with each other. For those who are listening, there's so much opportunity in the space, even outside of collecting. If you don't have the capital, for $100 ETH purchase, you can still create a podcast or create some sort of like aggregate website. There's so much opportunity out here to just network that I know it's for you. You've been in the space since 2012. I've been through 2017. Nascent crypto communities don't stay so small forever, and it's good to be familiar with the people early, because once it blows up, it's hard to communicate with everyone. But then everyone reaps the reward and success with monetary capital, social capital, intellectual capital, and so on.
Yeah, that's one thing I've really enjoyed over the last, that was completely unexpected, is, the communities that I've been a part of with like Curio cards and, to an extent RAREPEPE, but just the vintage scene as a whole it's been really amazing. There's so many cool people that I've come across. I don't know, it's been really positive. I didn't expect that, but it's an amazing community, and I'd like to keep that as much as possible before it, blows up, right?
Yep. It's before Gary and everyone finally makes that commitment. We are starting to see it, which isn't spoken about a lot. Some people in the traditional world aping in, like Matt Kalish, who's one of the co-founders of DraftKings, and Daryl Morey, who's the president of the 76ers. They have allocated a lot. I would say 500 ETH to 1,000 or more in a lot of these historic assets. And they're pretty silent on their purchases. I know Matt has a blockhead as his profile picture. Daryl Morey kind of just buys pretty much anything historic because he likes that risk curve appreciation potential. But I think we're going to see more coming in the future. And some of those voices might not be as quiet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what another reason that makes it so exciting is that this is so like within the outside of our individual community. Like, who's heard of vintage NFTs? It's so unknown. So again, there's such limited supply. It just takes a tiny. It's just like a kindling there, just waiting for a spark. It's going to be really explosive when we see any real adoption by outsiders coming in.
2022 is our year. Well, Zero, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Really enjoyed this conversation. You're definitely a leader in the space and you have a lot of experience that you can apply. I'm interested to see the brokerage or some of these unearthings or maybe some of the other things that you're hiding back there waiting to share.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'll certainly keep you in the loop as some of these other things get closer to fruition. I'm kind of getting sick earlier in the year, so slowly working my way back.
Almost there. Well, yeah, thank you again. Everybody that's made this far. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.